what's going on, guys? This is Howard Redux, and welcome back to another technology video on this channel, frickin' finally, once again. Today, well, what's all this stuff doing here? What does it have to do with? Well, it all has to do with this MacBook, why I use it, how I use it, and how I have to use it, and what things you have to do in order to accommodate for it in your daily life, or in your weekly life, or for me, my entire life. So, first things first, what the hell is it? Well, this is a 16-inch 2019 MacBook Pro, the top of the line with the 2 terabytes of storage. Actually, I believe these came with up to 4 terabytes, but this only has 2, which is still plenty for both macOS and Windows, which we'll talk about later. This also has the 8-core i9 processor, the 2.4 gigahertz model, which is the best you could get in this. And it also has 32 gigabytes of RAM and the Radeon Pro 5600M GPU with 8 gigs of HBM2 memory. You know how NVIDIA is all about the GDDR6X and stuff? Well, this has HBM2, which is even better. And the machine is pretty large. Let's get an iPhone to compare with it. Here's a contemporary iPhone nowadays, and my iPhone 12 Pro, and as you can see, 16 inches. It's pretty big. But the thing about it, though, is it's kind of a perfect size. If you made it smaller, it would be too small, and if you made it bigger, it would be unwieldy. So this is kind of the perfect size for this kind of machine. On the side, we have 2 very blurry USB-C ports. These use the USB-C connector, but these are actually Thunderbolt 4 or Thunderbolt 3, I believe. I think they're Thunderbolt 3, which means you can do a lot more with it than just like a USB 3.2 Type-C port, and way faster as well. And on the other side, just as blurrily, we have 2 more of those same ports and a headphone jack, a 3.5mm headphone jack. There you go, you can kind of see them now. Maybe I'll zoom in post. On the back, we have nothing, except for some weird cooling vents, which are like really trapped underneath there. And then along the front, we just have some minor scuffs from, my daily use. And we have the wedge for, to open the thingy. So let's open the thingy. If I drop this, I will cry. Ignore the background. However, it's pretty self-explanatory right here. Anyway. So the first thing you might realize is the display panel, which is pretty large and accommodates pretty much the entire thing here. There's still some bezels, but that doesn't really matter too much. What really matters is the resolution and how clear it is and, how bright. This gets decently bright. However, if you use this outdoors, it doesn't really get bright enough for that. So you really indoors, but in pretty much any setting indoors, this is amazing. What's weird about it though is this has kind of a resolution problem. I can't really determine what resolution this panel is actually running at, how many pixels it's actually pushing. I guess I can confirm that this display panel is at least 4K resolution in total. And if you were here pixel peeping with me, you'd agree with me. But in the interest of not wasting more of your time, I'm going to switch back to the resolution that I actually use, which I went past just now. And it's actually not listed here, so I have to go fix it in system settings. Great. There we go. And now I would give you an actual representation of what this display looks like through an HDMI output, for example, which would give you the one-to-one picture of what this is displaying, but for some reason, the almighty box, the Elgato box, is refusing to work properly with it. It'll display an output for a couple seconds, and then it'll just crap out. So you know what? Fuck you, Elgato. You're absolutely useless. No one buy their stuff. Some other things of note on here, other than the awesome display, is a not quite so awesome 720p webcam up here, which is the FaceTime HD camera, and a microphone which is actually placed right here. We'll come back to that. So along the keyboard, or the bottom part here, we have a Force Touch trackpad, which I hate, although it's, to be honest, better than any PC laptop that I've ever owned, and I've owned a lot of them, so, whatever. I mean, it's good enough, and it's absolutely massive, sometimes too big, which is better than it not being big enough. So up here we have what's called the touch bar, I believe, which is actually running on like an internal chip that basically is running the Apple Watch OS in the secure enclave, I believe is what it's called inside this machine. It's a special chip that does, security and stuff. And well, it's running a special version of basically Watch OS, and that's what's running this panel right here, this strip. It's actually its own separate computer inside the computer. which seems kind of weird and kind of dumb, but hey, it works pretty much all the time. I haven't really had any soft locking with it, so that's good. And I have customized this a little bit to, you know, give it a sleep button, and it just wakes back up, and a screenshot button. I can just tap that, and I can just tap that, and it'll give me a little screenshot thing. I can do whatever I want and capture screen, make really creepy images of people and stuff like that, which is really cool and really useful at times. So I'm really glad I have that there, so I don't have to keep it in my dock, because I have enough crap in my dock, as you could tell. So there's also volume controls. I customized these a little bit. There's also you know, the keyboard brightness. I usually have it off, of course. Normal display brightness. AirPlay stuff, which I guess is kind of useful. Sometimes this doesn't do anything. Actually, this isn't doing anything at all right now. Maybe that's because I'm not actually in content. Maybe that's why. But anyway, we also have spaces or desktops, whatever that is. I don't use it. And moving a bit lower, we have a dent, but we also have the keyboard, which to you viewers probably much less interesting than how I got this dent. Thankfully, I don't remember how that happened, so let's move on. The keyboard. The keyboard is... it's pretty good. It's actually worse than the 11-inch MacBook Air for me. Like, there's less travel, but it's not horrible. It's not like the PC keyboards I've used. It's actually, you know, pretty good. And not too bad to game on either. It's just kind of weird gaming on a laptop. Seriously, laptop and phone people, if you've been gaming on your portable device and you ever get a taste of actual PC gaming, like on a gaming PC setup, then you would never want to go back. So, yeah. So yeah, gaming on this is like gaming on any other laptop. It's just a not too bad experience. Something that's also not too bad of an experience is the speakers. This has a lot of speaker stuff in it. I mean, this is around the time they started going insane with the speaker setups on their portable devices. I believe there's 3 speakers under here, and there's 3 speakers under here, and 2 of which are subwoofers. I think there's tweeters and of course main drivers as well. So there's a lot of speaker stuff going on in here, even though this computer's really freaking thin. And that's amazing on its own, but it's also amazing that no one else seems to be able to match Apple in terms of audio at all. Like, it just doesn't happen. Apart from like machines from like 17, 18 years ago that haven't been updated since then, that had insane audio setups and a price tag to match. But for MacBooks, this is almost as good as it gets. This is definitely as good as it gets for an Intel MacBook, which is why I even have it. But before we segue into that, let's talk about the speaker arrangement and how it affects the microphone arrangement. So, as I mentioned before, the microphone is under the speaker grill. What do you think the speakers are? Underneath the goddamn same speaker grill. So, how is anyone going to hear you if you're playing sounds? Like if you're on a Discord call. Well, actually Discord is a special example because Discord puts the audio all the way over here. Because it used to be a mono application, meaning the audio is only sent to you monorally, so, you know, it can only be played from one speaker accurately. So that wasn't a big deal. But now that you can push stereo sound through Discord, it's shoving all of that into one side. That's kind of stupid, but what are you going to do? The microphone's under this speaker. So Apple kind of had a skill issue there, but they couldn't put it up here because, of course, how microphones work, I'm not going to get into that, but basically they couldn't put a microphone here because there just isn't enough thickness here. I know some people are going to argue that point, but probably just wasn't worth it, and it was just way easier, and they could put better mics in this by putting them under here. And to be honest, the mic in this machine is really good, as long as the machine it's in doesn't drag it down. This truly is a studio quality microphone, and I have recorded some stuff with it, and they're not horrible. They're way better than any Bluetooth stuff I've ever messed with, and they're even better than some dedicated microphones that I've used. So yeah, there you go. It is truly a studio quality microphone. However, it's right by speakers and in a machine that the fans, if you're playing a game, are going to ramp up on, so you can't really record gaming videos well on this computer with the internal mic. As if you were going to do that anyway. But if you were going to do that, this machine is not a bad one to pick for that. If you actually need a Mac, and if you can only get one computer, because that's the pickle I was in. I needed a machine that was decent enough at gaming, that, you know, ran Minecraft and Gary's Mod and Doom and stuff like that, but could also record could run Windows and could run pretty much all Steam games smooth enough to where I could record them on the go if needed, like in a hotel or on a trip or something, which I don't do often, but when I'm in bed recording stuff, this comes in really handy because or else I wouldn't be able to do that at all. So yeah. So that's another reason why I have this machine, is just because, well, this is not the final Intel MacBook ever made. That was the 2020 i7 MacBook Pro, the 13-inch one. This is the final 16-inch Intel machine. This is the most powerful Intel machine Apple ever made, except maybe for the Mac Pro and the iMac Pro. But this is the last and the most powerful and the best. So, of course, it was the only option if I wanted decent performance while still being a Mac and also being able to run Windows as well as Mac OS, which were both a requirement because most games don't run under Mac OS. They can't for some reason. Actually, the reason, you can blame the devs and in turn Apple for that as well. But it's mostly on the devs for just not having the time. Not everyone has the time to make everything work for every single use case. Not everyone has time to support macOS as well as Windows when Windows is already a pain in the ass. So yeah, same issue for Linux. That's why I don't have Linux on here, because there's actually no point to putting it on here. If you have macOS, you basically have Linux already, just a little bit more closed down. But if you're really dug, you can customize it just as much as Linux. So anyway. So this is the last best Intel MacBook ever made. And some games still have issues, like Gary's Mod doesn't run on macOS, but it will on Windows. Doom runs just fine on here, but it has some issues if you try to record the audio from it. Things just have, Mac issues. Mac just sometimes has issues with programs, and you have to deal with that. So when I don't feel like dealing with that anymore, I go over to the unholy abomination known as Windows, which I have installed on this machine through Boot Camp, which you can no longer do on the new Apple Silicon architecture chips, which is quite sad, because they could have, and they could have made it quite easy if they had tried at all. So old versions of Minecraft are a pretty good example of why I got an Intel MacBook over the new M series MacBooks. And why would that be? Well, because this doesn't have the color shift issues, which is pretty much a requirement for me, as really no one is going to the great lengths to fix that on the newer machines. And even then, there would be other issues that someone would have to fix. And since I can't fix them, I'm assuming they're just not going to get fixed for a while. So I don't have the time to wait for that. I need to do stuff now. So I went out and got this machine instead. So what other aspects of this machine make it appealing for my needs specifically? Well, this does have a decent enough GPU to run most games. Usually this will just be running on the integrated Intel graphics, which is the Intel UHD Graphics 630, which are balls, but at least they're there and they do save a lot of power. When you're just doing stuff with the main OS, not actually gaming. But when you're gaming, you really do want to switch over to the discrete GPU, which unfortunately is not an NVIDIA card. If this did have an NVIDIA card, this would be a way more killer machine than it is, but NVIDIA and Apple fell out a long time ago because they're basically the same company. They need to have the same powers, meaning they can't work together, and they just haven't, so we're stuck with AMD on this thing. But at least it's an AMD Radeon Pro 5600M, and I almost went with the Radeon 5700 XT for my 2020 gaming PC build. And this has a chip in it that's about in the same league as that one. It just has much better VRAM, actually. It has 8 gigabytes of HBM2, which is short for High Bandwidth Memory 2. And that basically means the VRAM in this machine is way better than pretty much anything else in terms of gaming cards. Of course, the card itself is pretty garbage in comparison to a 4080 or even a 1070 could probably beat it. Effectively, I have a desktop 1660 Super inside of this machine that runs perfectly fine in most cases. But that really does suck on battery life. However, that gives us a great segue into battery life. But first I have to tie off the previous topic. I got the last best Intel one of these because of compatibility. I needed to run stuff, and I needed it to run perfectly fine under many conditions. And one of the new M series ones wouldn't have done that very well. I actually do have an M series Mac Mini, an M2 Pro Mac Mini that I edit all these videos on, and works great for that, but for pretty much anything else, it's pretty dookie. So I needed this specific machine, and that's why I have it. So I mentioned the Radeon Pro is in here, right? Well, how does that do on battery life? Well, naturally, being a discrete GPU and having an i9 also in this machine running at the same time, not too great, because each one of those can use up to 50 watts at the same time. Both of those using 50 watts at the same time, not just one of them or the other. Both of them can use 50 watts. I've actually gotten the GPU and the CPU in this machine at the same time to read 200 degrees Fahrenheit, which sounds bad, but it's, again, really the maximum temperature before they start throttling. But that's when I'm intentionally pushing this super hard. You shouldn't do anything like that for extended periods of time on a laptop. That's not the thing this is for. That's just not a valid use case for this. And it really shouldn't be to begin with. Why would you do that on your laptop? It's just going to be slower and worse no matter what. Like, just don't do heavy workload stuff on your laptop. Simple as that. But it's nice you can still do it. It's just going to be a little bit slower than usual. But speaking of the heat issues of this machine, I also got the machine to basically draw 100 watts continuously off of the battery in here, which, if you guys didn't know, this machine has an 100 watt hour battery, which is actually the biggest battery you can put in any, device or anything to be able to carry it on an airplane and stuff and, carry it through security. Like, you just can't carry like 168 watt hour battery with you through like airport security. It just won't fly. So yeah, this is limited by that, and that can be seen in a number of other areas, definitely not in, Apple's ball court. Like, this is a portable battery bank, and this is, again, 100 watt hours, because it's the biggest and best battery you can get that you can still take on an airplane and to trips and stuff. And to be honest, most gaming laptops have like a battery that's smaller than this. So this is a battery has more capacity than most gaming laptops, very high-end ones too, which is quite sad. So I'm going to switch this back to the integrated graphics to save on power a little bit. But speaking of power, what kind of peripherals does this thing need to operate? On its own, it really doesn't need anything, but if you want to do anything kind of heavy with it, you're going to need some heavy equipment. This is actually not what I meant to pick up. This is its power adapter, and actually this is the one that I have that doesn't have the extension cord. I actually just brought this up from downstairs because this is pretty much always plugged in downstairs, because the extension cord one of these I have hooked up next to my bed so I can use this laptop in bed, but I actually have this one, which doesn't have an extension cord, purposely always plugged into a power bar downstairs. So I just walk in, plug the cable into it, and then plug it into the laptop, and bam, wall power. So this is a 96 watt hour USB-C power adapter, which my camera is being an idiot, even though I set it up correctly. It does say 96 watts. You'll just have to believe me on that. I can't actually show you because my camera's being an idiot. Frickin' finally, 96 watts, USB-C power adapter. And this is the official Apple one. I got scammed on one, unfortunately, another time. And it worked for a little bit, and then it tried to catch fire, so I decided I wasn't going to use it anymore. So I went and bought this one. Yeah, and I can add an extension cable to it if I really wanted to. I just don't need one. And the cable that goes with it is not too bad either. It's a pretty nice cable, however, it's not really that long, but if you need a longer cable, just get an extension cable for this. I did kind of screw this one up though. Not the yellowing. The actual connector is bent, as you can see there. It's pretty screwed, but it does still work perfectly fine, so that's good. This one is not bent, however, these have yellowed over time. Not too much time either. Like this, it's only been a couple of years and these are already pretty yellowed. To be honest, that's more yellowing than I've ever seen on any MacBook power cable, so that's bizarre. I don't know what happened there. Maybe it's due to heat, who knows? So what else do I have here? Well, I have this, which is a USB-C adapter for Ethernet. This is actually a 2.5 gigabit Ethernet dongle thingy, which if I plug into the USB-C port here, I now have Ethernet, which is a must-have for me, as I'm always transferring a lot of large files across the network to my network drives, so I needed this. And since I'm basically going to be stationary for at least a little while wherever I am with this thing in this house, I can just plug Ethernet into it and bam. 2.5G. I will say though that this thing has a few issues with the software of this machine. Apparently the hardware driver that the chip in this particular adapter requires just eats up gobs of CPU on this machine because Apple just doesn't include efficient drivers for it out of the box, which is weird, and there doesn't seem to be a solution for it. The solution is get a different adapter. Get a better adapter, get a more expensive adapter, which I guess is fair. You cheap out, you get cheaped. So yeah. But what that also means is that if this adapter were a 10 gig Ethernet adapter, this machine would actually be CPU bound because of that inefficiency. It would actually peg the CPU so much that this would never get to 10 gigs if this were a 10 gig Ethernet adapter. So that's kind of sad, but for a 2.5 gig NIC, that's fine. It works, it does what it's supposed to do, and it doesn't kill the laptop, although it does heat up quite a bit when doing tasks with it, like FileZilla. So as we saw before, this machine only has USB-C ports. How do we plug normal stuff into it? Well, short answer is you don't. But the correct answer is you get a little adapter that costs, I don't know, these probably cost 20 bucks now, but these costed like 40 bucks when I bought them. I have two of these. I don't know where the other one is, but this is the one I found. And you can just plug it in here. So this adapter does go at USB 3.0 speeds, which you would hope because it costs 40 bucks. And because this is an official Apple thing that they sell and they make. So you plug this in and open up your laptop, and it should be on my desktop shortly. There it is, Buffalo SSD. This is a 2 terabyte USB stick that will appear in a video not too far down the road because this is actually my favorite piece of consumer tech, believe it or not. So let's find something that's decently large. Looks like the biggest thing that I have on here is an Audacity project, which is a bit bizarre, but whatever. Let's copy this to the SSD, and it's 1.5 gigabytes, and it copies before the copy window even pops up. So I'm gonna call that a pass. So it's going to be reading and writing at about 422 megabytes a second, which is amazing, especially for a USB stick, and especially for a 2 terabyte USB stick going through an adapter. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's annoying that you have to have an adapter because what this means is you can't just plug any other adapter into this computer. You have to get another adapter to plug your new adapter into it, and then you can plug other things into it. And you know what's fun? Some things are too big. This doesn't even fit. You have to put it on this one. So yeah, that kind of sucks, but at least it works, which is kind of an unwritten miracle. An alternative to this mess is, well, one of these. Never mind, this one's trash. I actually bought this on Temu for 10 bucks. Don't get this. This will never, ever run at USB 3.0 speeds. The card reader runs at like half USB 2 speeds, and this Ethernet is actually 10100 Ethernet. You know how old that is? That's like 20 years old. So this runs at about 1/10 of gigabit Ethernet, which is what computers have been shipping for like 15 years. So wow, I don't even know how they got something that cheap. I don't even think they should make those anymore. The actual good one is this one. It doesn't have Ethernet, but at least it has HDMI. And this actually does run at USB 3.0 speeds, and the card reader isn't actually too bad either. And again, these both have USB-C connectors, so you just plug them right in, and they work. So that's a lot of dongles, right? So you know how people like to say that Apple gives up on standards too quickly, and they just get rid of ports and get rid of ways to do things that really doesn't make any sense? Well, that's not always true, and in fact, it's only true for some and very few things that they've done. For example, I'm gonna prove it to you right now. Look at this chunky thing. This is a Sony Handycam from, I don't know, like 1999 or 2001. This thing does still work, actually, if you turn it on and take the lens cap off. You can actually record stuff with it. Zoom into my audio recording there. There's the Lumix over there, which is shooting me. Now I'm dead because it shot me. So we just shot some video. But how are we gonna get it off? Because we can actually go and view it. Actually record stuff with it. There's the Lumix over there, which is shooting me. Now I'm dead because it shot me. So how do we get this video off? Well, that's not so simple with PCs. Because what you're supposed to do with your PC is put in a special card that deals with formats from these old cameras, mainly FireWire. Let's talk about that. This camera is so old that this actually has a CRT viewfinder. That's a CRT in there. That's an old tube TV. And you can connect this to a freaking Mac to this MacBook specifically as well by just using 2 adapters. Use this cable that goes from the camera to FireWire 800, then you convert FireWire 800 to another old Apple standard, which is called Thunderbolt, and then you convert Thunderbolt with another adapter that I, for some reason, can't find anywhere, but do have, and then that converts Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 3, which then goes into one of these USB-C ports. And it works flawlessly. It works just the same as if you had a 12-year-old MacBook with FireWire 800 or a 1997 Apple iMac with FireWire 400. It works exactly the same. The only thing that's changed is the software, which still works with this camera. That proves that Apple doesn't actually get rid of things unless they have a reason for it. They didn't have a reason to get rid of this ancient way of doing things, so they just didn't. Of course, don't expect to call Apple up and expect them to even know what videotape was, but, you know, to each their own. So another thing that I do with tech is I use the old stuff. Like, I really like iPods and, using them and just the software, the games, like this. This is a freaking camera on an iPod Nano from 2009. You don't find that kind of stuff nowadays, mainly because it probably just wouldn't make sense, but like that's crazy. It's crazy that they did that. And they did it so long ago as well. And you only find that in the old stuff. So, I want to seek that stuff out. But of course, running these old devices, they need either old software, old computers, or a combination of the two. Usually a combination of the two. And having an old Intel Mac that can run Windows and macOS is a really good way to ensure that you have a safeguarded way to run these devices, using old jailbreak stuff, but you can still use the Apple iTunes built into macOS if you really need to. Or you can use an old version of iTunes in whatever it's called, Windows. That monstrosity. This all comes back to just needing an Intel MacBook specifically, because I also needed it to be portable. It couldn't be a Mac Mini because, well, I could take that on trips and stuff and, hook it up when I get to a place, but I need to bring a monitor, a keyboard, a mouse, and all this random crap. I don't want to do that, and usually don't have the room for that. So this is pretty much the best option. It's also more powerful than a Mac Mini as well, because Mac Minis, apart from 2005 and one specific model in 2011, they never came with discrete graphics at all. And even when they did, they were dire. So yeah, not an option. And I can attest, because I've done it many times, this still runs modern Minecraft perfectly fine, even better with Iris installed, and it does definitely run, old versions of Minecraft, like beta 1.102. I've played many an hour of alpha plays on this very machine. So it does pretty much everything I needed to do, except being a powerhouse. This really is not a powerhouse. This has a discrete GPU, which was not top of the line, and it's 5 or 6 years old by now. And it was never meant to be a gaming GPU either. It's a workstation GPU. You're not supposed to play games on it, but you can, and it's astonishing how well that works when it does. This will play Valorant at 4K. Full resolution, and it'll look flawless on this display, but you have to be under Windows when you do that, but it still runs perfectly. This does have really bad thermals though, in terms of, burning your legs. You do not want to game on this machine if you plan to use it as a laptop when you do that, because your nads will scream for ice cream. Just don't do it. But apart from that, the thermals aren't too bad. The processor does sometimes, actually for me very frequently, just stay at 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 100 degrees Celsius, which is the temperature limit of the CPU and the GPU in this machine, and pretty much any other machine. But that's because of very bad devs that don't really know what they're doing. Specific groups that have these devs include Valve, Audacity, FFmpeg. Although FFmpeg, it's more of a handbrake issue, not FFmpeg. But most FOSS software has just random issues that have issues with Mac because no one actually thinks to test it. They just assume, well, it's the user's fault, because to be honest, on Mac it usually is. But I'd also like to tell you, why would I even bother using a Mac in the first place? I didn't really explain myself. I explained myself many times in the past, but never really officially. Well, first things first, video editing on Mac and video processing on Mac is so much better than anything on the PC, and also so much more efficient on the Mac as well than PC, that there's no competition. If you're doing video production, you get a Mac. There's nothing to discuss. Unless you're doing super high power stuff like, 8K 120 video processing, Yeah, you're probably going to need an A6000, but as long as you don't need that, this will pretty much do. Not this one specifically, but for example, the M2 Pro Mac Mini, it's kept up with my Cinema 4K 60 video content. It works, and it works perfectly. It works better than any PC I've ever used, so. And it only uses about 2 watts doing it too, which is insane. And the M2 Pro is definitely not even the end game. That's their second jump. They've made 2 more jumps since then. Their iPad, for some reason, has an M4 processor that can actually probably do 8K 120 decoding. It's that powerful. And it could probably do editing with it too, if it wasn't a frickin' iPad. So Apple kind of had a skill issue there, but anyway. Oh, why didn't you try a PC laptop? I've actually had a lot of PC laptops over the past 5 years. I still have a few, and they're not horrible machines either. They have really dumb properties, like having the speakers on the bottom of them. Dell, what are you doing? But other than that, they're not too bad. Their keyboards are alright, their screens are dookie, as expected, and their trackpads are good enough, and their performance is worse than they should be. But macOS just runs better on lower hardware specs than Windows does, so that's probably why. But come on, a quad-core CPU from 2018 should definitely be enough to run Windows 10, and if it's not, Windows has skill issues. But Windows having skill issues is not the only reason why I think PC laptops suck. It's because they do. They just suck. They double type out of the box, like $2,700 ones. Double type out of the box. And then people make fun of you on the internet for complaining about that, saying that, oh, it's user error. How can that be user error if it double types during the Windows setup? Huh? No. But other than people being either trolls or stupid, it also, that particular laptop, the Dell Alienware M17, I believe it was either the M17 or the M15X or R or whatever the fuck. It was some hyper expensive Alienware gaming laptop. Well, it had this really unpleasant edge that cut into your armpit when you try to carry it, and into your hand and the other end. And again, people made fun of me for pointing that out. It's like, guys, it's a bad design. Like, obviously. Like, this MacBook doesn't have those issues. I mean, this is extremely thin without having those problems. So it seems like Dell just had a skill issue when designing theirs. However, the performance in Minecraft and pretty much everything else on that machine, even with the integrated graphics, were beyond expectations. It was beyond glorious, it was awesome, and I can see why people like the performance of those machines. If you get one that actually works as expected, which, as far as I can tell and as far as I've experienced, pretty much doesn't happen anymore. That first one, it was basically a fluke because every single machine after that had countless issues. A lot of them arose from just having Windows on them because Windows is trashware, but they had endless hardware issues, like the trackpad not being set up for gaming right off the bat on a gaming-centric laptop. There's no excuse for that. That is just horrible. And I don't know what's wrong with the people designing these machines. And yeah, the Mac does have some issues that can be seen like that. But to be honest, none of the issues stem from the person that designed it not having a brain. Think about, what's a good Mac equivalent? How about the permanently attached power cable on the new studio display? That's nonsense. Like, why? But at the same time, no one bitches when the PC people do it. So that's kind of a double standard and really stupid. But anyway, that's why I have a Mac. That's the things that I do with it. I do video editing, gaming, video recording, voiceovers, audio recording. Everything from demonized soundtracks has been recorded on this or a very similar machine. In fact, about 95% of the demonized soundtracks, game soundtracks, they were recorded on this very laptop. And that's how I concluded that Audacity had skill issues. So this has been I Read Redux. Thank you very much for watching this kind of review, kind of showcase of this i9 16-inch MacBook Pro. And I'll see you all in the next live stream short or video, whatever that may be. Thanks for watching, guys. Have a great rest of your evening. See ya. This also has the on the side we have just as blurrily, except for some pretty so this, what's weird about it though is this has the really awkward, I guess that is the but I've seen some 30s. So we also have this up here, which is a little touch, just an internal Apple Watch. Maybe just because I'm much more. Thankfully, I don't remember why I got it. Thankfully, I don't remember how. It's and seriously, laptop on their portable. Let's talk about the speaker. And before we segue into that, because this is the final Intel, because most game. So this is the and of course that gives me all of those capabilities. But something that, and some games they do, which you can no longer do on the M series Mac. So a great example of the Intel MacBooks being a good option in terms of MacBooks in general. Like, why would you get this over? Which is well, there's not really all that much. However, so what else makes this good at gaming on my for my 20? About in the same league. It just has slight. That basically means the memory, the G. So that, but first, let's tie. I got the Intel one of these, and one of the new M series. It would for some things, but well, how does that do on? I've actually gotten this to. Why would you do that on there? But speaking of hundreds of degrees of Fahrenheit, But speaking of the power stuff, but speaking of the heat issues, of this machine. But speaking of those heat issues, I also got these two. Like, they're gonna take it away from you if you. At least I think they're gonna take it away from you if you have anything that's higher than that. But before we go into anything else, what? Okay, it's pretty stringy, but this is a 2. This is its power bank. Wait, no, it's not. This is its. I actually just took this from down. When I bring this laptop, it does say 96 watt hour. So there you go. Oh, frickin' finally. There you go, 96 watt hours. I did kind of. I kind of sneezed. Maybe it's due to heat, but what that also means is if this adapter were. But what that also means is if this. How do we plug? So this does read, and this runs at USB 3.0 speeds. Bear with me, my camera's having a fit. Alright, fucking hell, man. Alright, we're doing manual focus for now because my camera's having a bitch fit. And because this is before the window, and this works just fine. Half USB 1 speed, so that's a lot of dongle. Feels just like a ploy to either upset you or to get them to buy their other things like the AirPods. Embarrassingly so. So how do we get this? Mainly mini DV. Mainly DV, which still works with that camera. It's so another thing, at least a safeguarded way to run these devices. Using old jailbreak stuff. Because I also needed it to be portable. It couldn't be an app where I could. Apart from like 2005, and because Mac Minis this still runs, it does what I needed, and it'll look, your nads will be none. That was bad. Which is the temperature that, but I'd like to discuss, their iPad, for some reason, has more power than all of the machines. So, having the speakers, but skill issues with Windows. But other than hyper expensive Dale, and it had this really unpleasant edge when you carried it under your shoulder, which is really the only way you should carry it, at least if you're going from place to place quickly. So Dell seems like they just had a skill issue when they designed it. I don't know what's wrong with the people designing the stand, but apart from me calling out people that.
think all they need to say.